Welcome back to the Paranormal Ink Ohio Podcast. I'm your host, Ed, and tonight we are exploring a side of the paranormal that doesn't get discussed enough. When most people think about ghost stories, they imagine haunted houses, abandoned buildings, or old legends passed down through generations. But what happens when the person witnessing something unexplained is not a paranormal investigator? What happens when the person holding the flashlight is a police officer? When the person walking into the darkness is a firefighter, and when the person answering the emergency call is a paramedic. These are people trained to stay calm in situations where most of us would panic. They deal with tragedy, danger, and death on a regular basis. They are trained to trust what they see. They are trained to listen carefully. They are trained to separate fact from emotion. So when a first responder says, "I saw something I cannot explain," people tend to listen. Tonight we are looking at documented accounts from first responders and emergency personnel who reported encounters they believe were paranormal. Now, before we begin, we want to make something clear. These are not proven supernatural events. They are reports from witnesses who experienced something they could not explain. Some people believe these encounters were paranormal. Others believe they may be natural explanations. Either way, these are the stories of people who were simply doing their jobs until their jobs took them somewhere they never expected. Turn down the lights, lock the doors, and let's begin. Case 1. Resurrection Mary, the ghost hitchhiker encountered by police. One of the most famous ghost stories in America is the legend of Resurrection Mary. The story comes from the area surrounding Archer Avenue near Resurrection Cemetery outside Chicago, Illinois. For decades, drivers have reported seeing a young woman wearing a white dress walking along the road. The legend says she appears as a hitchhiker asking for a ride. Some drivers claim they picked her up. Some claim she disappeared from inside their vehicle. Others say she vanished near the cemetery gates. But what makes this story interesting for tonight's episode is that some of the reports came from people whose jobs require them to investigate unusual situations, including law enforcement. Over the years, police officers in the area have reportedly responded to calls involving a woman walking along Archer Avenue. Officers have described receiving reports from concerned motorists who believed someone was in danger. When officers arrived, they found no one. Some reported searching the area and finding no person matching the description. The legend became so well known that even local authorities were familiar with the reports. The most famous version of the story involves a young woman named Mary who allegedly died in a car accident while traveling with her boyfriend in the 1930s. According to the legend, she was buried at Resurrection Cemetery, and her spirit returned to the road where she died. Now, skeptics point out that ghost stories often grow over time. A person walking along a dark road, poor visibility, weather conditions, and an expectation can all influence what someone believes they saw. But believers point to something they find interesting. The reports have continued for generations, different people, different years, similar descriptions, and among those witnesses have been people who were simply responding to calls and doing their jobs. Whether Resurrection Mary is a ghost, a legend, or something else entirely, the story remains one of America's most famous unexplained encounters. Case number 2. Firefighters and the unexplained at Gettysburg. For many first responders, dealing with death is part of the job. Firefighters respond to accidents, police officers investigate tragedies, paramedics fight to save lives. But some locations seem to carry stories that follow them for generations. One of those places is Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. The Battle of Gettysburg was one of the bloodiest battles of the American Civil War. Thousands of soldiers were killed, many more were wounded. Over the years, visitors, historians, investigators, and even emergency personnel working in the area have reported strange experiences. Firefighters and emergency workers responding around historic areas have shared stories of hearing footsteps when nobody was present, voices in empty locations, and seeing figures that appeared and disappeared. One commonly reported type of experience involves hearing what sounds like a person calling for help. For people who work emergency jobs, hearing a cry for help is something they are trained to respond to immediately. It is instinct. It is part of who they are. Some emergency workers visiting or working around Gettysburg had described hearing sounds that seemed like wounded soldiers calling out. When they investigated, they found nothing. Some paranormal researchers believe these experiences could be examples of what is called a residual haunting, the idea that intense emotional events somehow leave an imprint on an important location. Skeptics offer different explanations. Wind moving through old structures, animals making unusual sounds, the brain trying to identify unfamiliar noises, and the powerful emotion atmosphere of a battlefield. But regardless of the explanation, Gettysburg continues to be a place where people report unusual experiences. And for those trained to respond when someone calls for help, hearing a voice from an empty battlefield can be deeply unsettling. Two very different locations, two very different types of encounters. One involving a woman walking along a lonely road, another involving voices connected to a battlefield where thousands lost their lives. But both share something in common. The witnesses were not looking for a ghost story. They were simply there, doing their jobs. And sometimes the strangest moments happen when we aren't searching for them. In part 2, we'll continue with more documented reports involving emergency personnel, including strange encounters connected to hospitals, police investigations, and calls that left experienced responders questioning what they witnessed. This is part 2 of our episode exploring documented reports from first responders who experienced something they could not explain. Police officers, firefighters, and paramedics spend their careers walking into situations most people would never want to face. They enter burning buildings, they respond to violent scenes, they arrive when people are at their most vulnerable. They are trained to look for evidence. They are trained to stay focused. But throughout history, some of these professionals have reported moments that challenged everything they thought they knew. Tonight we continue with more accounts from emergency personnel who encountered something unusual while answering the call. Let's talk about the third case, the haunted hospital. Nurses, security, and emergency personnel reports. Hospitals are places where life begins and where life ends. Every day, medical professionals witness incredible moments. Families celebrating new births, doctors saving lives, patients fighting to survive. But hospitals are also places where death is a regular visitor. Because of that, many hospitals around the world have developed reputations for unexplained activity. One of the most commonly reported experiences among healthcare workers involves seeing people who should not be there. Former hospital employees, including nurses, security officers, and emergency workers, have reported seeing figures walking through hallways, hearing voices coming from empty rooms, or feeling like someone was standing beside them when nobody was present. One common type of report involves emergency personnel responding to alarms or calls inside hospitals after hours. A security officer may see someone walking down a hallway, a nurse may hear a patient calling for help, a paramedic may arrive after being told someone needs assistance, only to discover nobody is there. Many of these reports are never officially investigated because they are considered personal experiences rather than physical events, but those who experience them often say the same thing. They know what they saw, they know what they heard, and they know it was something they could not explain. Skeptics point out that hospitals are environments filled with stress, exhaustion, and emotional situations. Long shifts, lack of sleep, can affect perception. The human brain is also designed to recognize patterns even when information is incomplete. But believers argue that healthcare workers are trained observers. They spend their lives paying attention to details. And when multiple employees report similar experiences in the same location, they believe it deserves attention. Case number 4, police officers and the phantom radio calls. Police officers depend heavily on communication. A radio call can mean the difference between life and death. Every officer knows the sound of their radio. They know the voices of dispatchers. They know the difference between a real emergency and interference. Over the years, some officers have reported receiving strange radio transmissions that seemed impossible. Some describe hearing voices from officers who were not transmitting. Others have reported hearing their own names called when nobody was there. One of the most discussed categories of these reports involves voices that seem to warn officers of danger. In some accounts, officers have claimed they heard a warning moments before entering a dangerous situation. While these stories are difficult to verify, they have become part of a police folklore. Experienced officers often say that strange things happen during late-night patrols. Long hours, isolation, dark roads, high stress, all of these factors can create situations where unusual experiences occur. But many officers who report these incidents insist they were fully awake, alert, and experienced enough to know the difference between normal radio issues and something unusual. For those officers, the question remains, was it a malfunction, a coincidence, a moment of intuition, or something trying to get their attention? Case number 5. Firefighters and voices from empty buildings. Firefighters are often among the first people to enter dangerous structures. They search rooms filled with smoke. They walk through unstable buildings. They rely on their training, their equipment, and their team. One type of unexplained experience reported by firefighters involves hearing voices inside structures where nobody should be. During a fire response, firefighters are trained to listen carefully. A person trapped inside a burning building may only have seconds to call for help. Because of this, firefighters take every sound seriously. Some firefighters have reported hearing screams, footsteps, or voices during searches, only to discover there was no person in that area. Sometimes later, investigations revealed there was no possible source for the sound. Firefighters who experience these moments often describe them as disturbing because their first instinct is always the same: find the person, save the person, and help the person. The idea that they may have heard something connected to someone who was already gone is something many firefighters find difficult to talk about. One explanation is that buildings create strange acoustics. Heat, wind, collapsing materials, and echoes can produce sounds that seem human. But some firefighters believe they have encountered something else, something connected to the people who once lived there. Case number 6. Paramedics and the calls that changed them. Paramedics see people on some of the worst days of their lives. They respond to accidents, medical emergencies, traumatic situations. They witness moments between life and death. Because of this, some paramedics have reported experiences they describe as impossible. One common theme involves patients who appear to communicate things they should not know. Some emergency medical workers have reported patients near death describing seeing family members who had already passed away. Others report unusual moments where a patient appears to know something happening around them despite being unconscious or severely injured. These experiences are often called near-death experiences, just like we listened to in my last episode, To Hell and Back. Scientists have studied them for decades. Some researchers believe they may be connected to brain activity during extreme medical events. Others believe they may represent something beyond our current understanding. Paramedics who witness these moments often divided. Some believe there is a medical explanation. Others believe they witnessed a glimpse of something beyond life. But many agree on one thing: the moments surrounding death are often filled with mystery. After looking at these reports, a pattern begins to appear. The people reporting these experiences are rarely searching for them. They aren't visiting abandoned buildings looking for ghosts. They aren't trying to prove something exists. They are working. They are answering calls. They are helping people. And maybe that's why these stories continue to interest so many people. Because when a person who has spent years facing danger says, "I experienced something I can't explain," again, people pay attention. The world of first responders is built on facts, evidence, training, and experience. But sometimes even the most prepared people encounter moments that don't fit neatly into what they know. A voice in an empty building, a figure in a hospital hallway, a radio transmission with no source. A call that leaves more questions than answers. In part 3, we'll finish our journey through some of the most chilling documented reports involving emergency personnel, including mysterious encounters from police investigations, rescue workers, and the final question: why do some of the strangest stories come from the people who are always there when something happens? Tonight we are finishing our investigation into one of the most fascinating areas of paranormal reports, the experiences of first responders. Police officers, firefighters, paramedics, people whose entire lives are built around helping others. These are not people who normally chase mysteries. They don't walk into danger because they want a story. They walk into danger because someone needs help. But sometimes during those moments, when they are answering the call, they encounter something they cannot explain. In this final part, we look at more reported experiences and the question that continues to surround them. Why do some of the strangest encounters happen to the people who are always there when tragedy strikes? Case 7, the phantom ambulance calls. For emergency dispatchers and paramedics, every call begins the same way. The phone rings, dispatcher answers, someone asks for help, an ambulance is sent. But throughout the years, some emergency workers have reported responding to calls that seem to disappear before they arrive. One type of story reported by emergency personnel involves receiving information about an emergency at a location, only to find no emergency at all. No injured person, no caller, no evidence anyone had ever requested help. These type of incidents can sometimes be explained by wrong addresses, prank calls, communication mistakes, or technical problems. But some responders have reported cases where the details of the call seemed unusually specific. The location, the description of the person needing help, a situation that sounded urgent, then nothing. Some paranormal researchers have connected these stories to the idea of phantom calls, reports of emergencies that seem to have no source. Skeptics argue that emergency systems are complicated and human errors happen. A wrong number, a confused caller, a miscommunication. But for the responders who arrive and find nothing, the experience can stay with them for years. Because every emergency worker has the same thought. What if someone really did need help? Case number 8, the shadow figures reported by police. One of the most common experiences reported by law enforcement officers is seeing what are often described as shadow figures. These reports usually involve a dark human-shaped figure seen briefly before disappearing. Officers working overnight shifts are especially likely to report these experiences. A figure standing near a roadway, someone moving between buildings, a person seen walking into an area and never appearing again. In many cases, officers investigate because they believe they may have witnessed a real person. They search, they check nearby areas, they find nothing. One reason these reports interest paranormal researchers is because they come from the people who are trained to identify threats. Police officers are constantly evaluating situations. They are trained to notice movement, body language, and details. However, skeptics point out that night conditions can be challenging. Low light, distance, reflections, fatigue, all of these can affect what someone sees. Still, some officers remain convinced that what they witnessed was not a normal person. And for them, the question remains, was it something passing through their environment? Or was it something they were never supposed to see at all? Case number 9, rescue workers and the sounds of the lost. One of the most emotional types of paranormal reports involving first responders comes from rescue workers. Search and rescue teams are trained to find people. They search forests, buildings, waterways, disaster areas. They follow voices, movement, any possible sign that someone needs help. Some rescue workers have reported hearing voices or cries for help in areas where no person was found. This type of experience is especially powerful because rescuers are conditioned to respond. When they hear someone calling, they move toward it. They investigate, they search. Some rescue workers have described hearing their names called or hearing what sounded like someone in distress. After searching the area, they found nothing. Could it be wind moving through the environment? Could it be animals? Could stress and intense concentration affect what someone hears? Absolutely. But some rescuers believe they encountered something connected to people who were lost, something that remained behind, something still calling out. Case number 10, the old station firefighters and haunted firehouses. Firehouses are places with a unique history. They are filled with stories. They are places where firefighters eat, sleep, train, and wait for the alarm. Because firefighters spend so much time in these buildings, Some firehouses have developed reputations for unusual activity. Firefighters across the country have reported hearing footsteps when nobody is walking, hearing doors open, hearing voices, seeing equipment move. Some reports involve older stations where firefighters who once served there have passed away. Many firefighters are skeptical about ghost stories. They deal with the real danger every day. They understand that buildings make noises, pipes expand, wood shifts, equipment moves. But some firefighters say certain experiences are different. They describe moments where they felt like someone was present, not threatening, just there. Some believe these reports are connected to the strong bonds formed between firefighters. The idea that someone who spent their life protecting others may still be connected to the station they loved. After hearing these accounts, an important question remains. Why do so many reports come from first responders? One explanation is simple. They are often placed in situations most people never experience. They work overnight, they enter abandoned places, they witness trauma, they spend time around moments of extreme emotion. From a scientific perspective, stress, exhaustion, grief, and the human brain's ability to interpret information can explain many unusual experiences. But from a paranormal perspective, some believe first responders are more likely to encounter unexplained events because they are often present during moments of intense emotion, birth, death, fear, and loss, life-changing events. Maybe these experiences are simply misunderstood. Maybe there are things about consciousness and human perception we don't fully understand. Or maybe, just maybe, there are moments when the line between our world and something else becomes thinner. The men and women who serve as first responders carry stories most of us will never hear. They carry memories of the lives they saved, the people they couldn't save, the moments that changed them forever. Sometimes they carry memories of things they cannot explain. A voice with no source, a figure that disappeared, a call that should never have happened. Whether you believe these experiences are paranormal, psychological, or something we have yet to understand, one thing is certain. First responders run toward the unknown every single day, and sometimes the unknown runs towards them. Thank you for joining us for this special 3-part episode of the Paranormal Ink Ohio Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, follow the show, share it with someone who loves the unexplained like we do. Send us your own stories. I would love to put you on a podcast. Because every town has a mystery, every place has a history, and every person has a story. Till next time, stay curious, stay safe, ask questions, and always remember, the scariest calls are sometimes the ones nobody can explain. Thank you all for joining tonight's episode. I hope you liked it. I love each and every single one of you, and you will hear again from me in the next episode. Thanks. Bye, everyone.